As of November 2018, this regular podcast is available on our Andy Yeh Alpha fintech network platform. Apple upstream suppliers from Foxconn and Pegatron to Radiance and Lumentum experience sharp share price declines during the Christmas 2017 holiday quarter. Foxconn, one of the major upstream suppliers for Apple iPhones and iPads, plans cutting costs at least $3 billion in 2019. In light of anemic demand for iPhones and iPads, Foxconn derives more than half of its revenue from Apple and now needs to reduce non-technical staff by at least 10%. Foxconn faces a difficult and competitive year ahead. As Goldman sets a lower share price target for Apple after the prior round of double cuts, this change triggers adverse ripple effects on the upstream assemblers from Foxconn to Pegatron. Foxconn assembles iPhones, tablets, laptop computers, and Sony PlayStations at factories in China, Taiwan, and America. As the smartphone market wanes and weakens in recent times, Sino-US trade tensions exacerbate global economic policy uncertainty. Foxconn flagship technology conglomerates post net profits about 12% below stock market analyst expectations as of November 2018. As the primary facial recognition technology provider for Apple, Lumentum also experiences a 9% share price decline in recent times. Other Apple upstream suppliers such as Pegatron and Radiance expect to receive more favorable net income results after the festive Christmas season. Apple now diversifies its smartphone provision into three major product lines, that is iPhone XS, iPhone XS Max, and iPhone XR. The Apple value chain can reap the fruits of tangible business process improvements only when the average retail price increase outweighs the imminent decline in smartphone sale volume. Due to a relatively low price elasticity of demand for iPhones and iPads, the Apple value chain expects to rebound in share price performance in the next couple of quarters. In terms of technology transfer, most flagship smartphones from Apple and Samsung to Huawei, Oppo, and Vivo now employ organic light-emitting diode, OLED, curvy touchscreens to ensure a better resolution and facial recognition. In comparison, the more affordable iPhone XR and Xiaomi smartphones continue to make productive use of liquid crystal display, LCD, flat touchscreens for high resolution and visual stability. As most flagship smartphones target early technology adopters and gadget lovers, the more affordable smartphones attract mainstream users who tend to be more responsive to both price changes and quality improvements. In dynamic equilibrium, this multi-market competition helps maintain mutual forbearance. Warren Buffett offloads several stocks from the Berkshire Hathaway portfolio in November 2018. The latest report shows that the Oracle of Omaha sold a significant number of shares in Phillips 66, Sanofi, Walmart, and 3 airlines, American Airlines, United Continental Airlines, and Southwest Air. Berkshire unloads Phillips 66 shares as the oil refinery company hovers around the 10-year high share price. Buffett exercises discipline to sell Sanofi shares when the global biopharma company faces the patent expiration for its long-active insulin Lantus, which raked in about $7 billion in annual revenue at its peak. Intense competition also arises for Sanofi from the broader context of both cancer and rare disease treatment. Berkshire has continued to reduce its equity bets on Walmart since 2016, and Buffett regrets his tough judgment call between the brick-and-mortar retailer Walmart and the e-commerce tech titan Amazon. Walmart has not been able to deter Amazon from acquiring its greater market share, and the Sino-US trade disputes and higher US wages can adversely affect both sales and net profit margins for Walmart. For these reasons, Berkshire offloads the residual 1.4 million shares in Walmart. Buffett further trims the Berkshire stock bets on several airlines below the 10% disclosure threshold in order to avoid onerous regulatory compliance requirements. The Chinese Xi administration delivers a written response to U.S. demands for trade reforms. This strategic move helps trigger more formal negotiations between both sides to resolve the current Sino-US trade war. Thus far $360 billion Chinese imports have been subject to 10% to 25% U.S. tariffs, and the Trump administration floats additional duties and concessions in recent times. In light of the U.S. midterm elections, President Trump expects to achieve a positive trade deal with China. The Trump administration is thus unlikely to impose new tariffs on Chinese imports. As both Chinese and American delegates and diplomats resume trade talks, the Trump team now sidelines most die-hard protectionists. President Trump and Chinese President Xi can next meet to agree on a new trade framework at the G20 summit in late November 2018. China can purchase more American goods to help reduce bilateral U.S. trade deficits. Yet the Trump administration may find it difficult to prevent the perennial Sino-U.S. technology transfer and other intellectual property theft in the mainland. The latter trade dilemma reflects the reality of unfair trade practices in several high-tech industries such as semiconductors, microchips, smartphones, artificial intelligence apps, visual animations, and speech recognition devices, etc. In fact, Sino-U.S. bilateral trade deficits have ballooned about 10% from $275 billion to $305 billion in the interim period from September 2017 to November 2018. Part of this deficit increase reflects an 8% rise in U.S. imports from China while U.S. exports to China remain flat. U.S. output growth, employment, and capital investment fire on all cylinders, so the U.S. economy attracts more Chinese imports in the current phase of robust economic growth. Greenback appreciation also contributes to this bilateral trade deficit increase, whereas, a weaker Chinese currency helps offset some costs of U.S. tariffs on Chinese imports. After all, the U.S. cannot readily replace Chinese imports with close substitutes because only China can produce these goods in a cost-effective way. On balance, the Trump administration should seek to deter unfair trade practices such as Sino-U.S. technology transfer as well as patent and trademark infringement. Whether the Trump team can substantially dampen bilateral trade deficits with China becomes a secondary issue. Insofar as the Trump administration can attain 3% to 4% real GDP economic growth, the additional tax revenue intake can self-finance fiscal budget and trade deficits. Former White House Chief Economic Advisor Gary Cohn points out that there is no instant cure for the current Sino-U.S. trade dilemma. After the U.S. midterm elections, the major trade issues remain on the radar, as Republicans secure a stronger majority in Senate and Democrats flip the House of Representatives. First, the net U.S. bilateral trade deficit with China is about $300 billion. And President Trump seems to be uncomfortable with the fact that this trade deficit is so large. Cohn disagrees with the presidential view because he alternatively views this trade deficit as $300 billion worth of goods that America can buy from China in a cost-effective way. However, Cohn suggests that the Chinese administration can resolve this issue by buying more American goods to better balance Sino-U.S. trade. Second, the more pertinent issue relates to the historically unfair situation that China often forces technology transfer when U.S. tech corporations enter the mainland market. Chinese regulations require U.S. tech companies to establish onshore data centers and IT research labs such that Sino-American technology transfer takes place. China thus fails to pay for foreign intellectual properties such as patents, trademarks, and copyrights, etc. This core issue persists at the heart of the current Sino-U.S. trade impasse. A congressional split between Democrats and Republicans can cause ripple effects on Trump economic reforms. Democrats have successfully flipped the House of Representatives, whereas Republicans retain a bigger majority in the Senate. Democrats now represent a majority of American voters, but Republicans dominate geographic constituents across the U.S. states. The Economist suggests that this division of congressional power can be a recipe for gridlock, poor governance, and eventually, disenchantment with the political system itself when one chamber of the U.S. legislature garners popular support and the other chamber receives territorial support. Several priorities arise as topical issues for Democrats. First, Democrats can exercise restraint on probable presidential abuses of power. For instance, Democrats can help ensure that federal agencies such as the Federal Reserve and Treasury conduct independent policy decisions with minimal presidential influence and interference. Specifically, the Federal Reserve can continue the current interest rate hike for better inflation containment, monetary growth, and credit supply expansion when the U.S. economy operates near full employment. The Treasury should help better balance the U.S. fiscal budget with at least $2 trillion national debt and about $800 billion annual deficits when the U.S. real GDP per capita has to grow at 3% to 4% in order to fill the fiscal void left by U.S. budget and trade deficits. Second, Democrats should cooperate with the Trump administration and Republican senators on infrastructure, immigration, and health care in order to appeal to a broader base of American voters. U.S. infrastructure and immigration can be less toxic when Democrats work well with Republicans to approve necessary budget deals for both vital job creation and organic population growth. Also, Democrats can find feasible solutions for the Trump administration to reduce drug prices and medical costs with little disruption to the pharmaceutical industry. Third, Democrats should refrain from opposing every constructive proposal from the Trump administration. No rational party should abuse its House majority to block sensible and useful public policies. On the economic front, Democrats should see value in antitrust regulation of tech titans such as Amazon, Facebook, and Google etc. across e-commerce, social media, and internet search. Democrats should further recognize the importance of regular macroprudential stress tests for large banks to better monitor their long-term financial viability and resilience. On balance, Democrats can collaborate with the Trump administration and Republican senators for better economic governance as both parties seek bipartisan solutions, middle grounds, and common interests. The Trump administration mulls over antitrust actions against Amazon, Facebook, and Google. President Trump indicates that the $5 billion fine against Google from the European Union makes him consider pursuing regulatory measures on Amazon, Facebook, and Google. There is a pervasive concern that these tech titans monopolize specific niches with both exorbitant market power and dominance. Amazon dominates in e-commerce and cloud service with substantial market clout. Facebook specializes in social media with more than 2 billion active users, and Google monopolizes internet search with 90% plus US online search traffic. These tech titans seek to make productive use of artificial intelligence to expand into the adjacent markets for autonomous vehicles, smart home appliances, and other mobile devices. For these relevant reasons, the Trump administration considers antitrust actions against these tech giants. The Trump administration may impose one-off fines and penalties on Amazon, Facebook, and Google etc. for specific antitrust situations. However, President Trump has no comment on breaking up these tech titans. The prior Microsoft case can offer insights into this similar antitrust dilemma, and the Trump administration may further draw lessons from the rules and regulations on financial institutions and pharmaceutical firms. Warren Buffett approves Berkshire Hathaway to implement meaningful stock repurchases. Buffett sends a positive signal to the stock market with the Berkshire $1 billion stock buyback. This stock buyback involves $1 billion Berkshire Hathaway share repurchases as of 2018 Q3 and thus boosts the share price almost 5% in early November 2018. This share buyback program can continue into the final weeks of the current calendar year. From July 2018 to October 2018, Berkshire has been an active net buyer of $24 billion US stocks. This decision doubles the overall dollar volume in the first half of the current calendar year. Until July 2018, Berkshire Hathaway would repurchase shares only if the stock price fell below 120% of its book value, about $152 per share as of September 2018. A recent corporate amendment allows Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger to approve share repurchases if they believe that the stock price is much lower than its intrinsic value. This amendment provides greater flexibility for new stock buyback programs and so may result in meaningful share repurchases at Berkshire Hathaway. Warren Buffett points out that the intrinsic value of Berkshire Hathaway far exceeds its book value, particularly in the property and casualty insurance businesses. Zillow share price plunges 20% year to date as its competitors Redfin and Trulia also experience an economic slowdown in the real estate market. The U.S. real estate market hits a sudden and significant slowdown in recent times. Zillow, Redfin, and Trulia experienced the current trend that home buyer demand wanes in several major real estate regions such as San Jose, Seattle, Virginia, Washington, D.C., Boston, and Chicago, etc. Home formation growth falls short of house price momentum, so excess inventories arise as a result of lower home buyer demand. Zillow makes most of its revenue from online ads and lead generation tools for real estate agents, and Redfin and Trulia serve as online real estate brokerage firms with rich house data. After a decade of economic recovery, the U.S. real estate market has been heading into a mild recession in 2018. Not only do mortgage rates rise during the current monetary policy phase, house prices continue to climb about twice as fast as average household income figures. Trump tax reforms also reduce tax incentives for home buyers to invest in real estate properties. These trends hurt the share price performance of both Zillow and Redfin alike. President Trump promises a great trade deal with China as Americans mull over midterm elections. President Trump wants to reach a trade agreement with Chinese President Xi Jinping at the G20 summit in Argentina later in November 2018. President Trump also asks key cabinet secretaries to draft a potential trade deal to halt escalating the current trade conflict with the Chinese Xi administration. If President Trump can achieve an accord on trade with President Xi, the Trump administration can refrain from imposing tariffs and other economic sanctions on another $267 billion Chinese imports. These economic sanctions focus on the perennial shady Chinese practices of intellectual property theft. These shady practices often entail requiring foreign companies to establish data centers and IT theme parks in China such that both proprietary data and technology transfer to tech-savvy Chinese companies. Several e-commerce giants such as Amazon and Alibaba express grave concerns about U.S. domestic job creation in the wake of tariffs, quotas, and other retaliatory trade barriers. For instance, Alibaba Executive Vice Chairman Joe Tsai suggests that his boss Jack Ma has promised the creation of 1 million small business jobs on the premise of few Sino-U.S. trade barriers. His conservative tone departs from the previous promise by Alibaba Executive Chairman Jack Ma, who now withdraws his earlier claim of ubiquitous U.S. job creation in a low-key fashion. Michael Bloomberg offers $80 million for Democrats to flip the House of Representatives in the November 2018 midterm elections, gears up his presidential bid, and eyes the Democratic nomination for 2020. Bloomberg now actively considers a presidential campaign as a Democrat in 2020, and he figures out that the Democrat nomination would be his only path to the White House, even though he voices stark disagreements with progressive proponents on bank regulation, law enforcement, and the recent #Me Too movement. At age 76, Bloomberg is a financial media billionaire and former New York City mayor. On the economic front, Bloomberg considers himself more familiar with macro policy issues and reforms that would better shape U.S. real macro variables such as real GDP per capita, employment, and capital investment, etc. Bloomberg has entertained the pragmatic idea of pursuing presidency several times before, and continues to show minimal preference for the rough-and-tumble tactics of conventional partisan political discourse. There is a fair chance that Bloomberg can receive the Democratic nomination to win the presidential bid against President Trump. This putative scenario might overturn the Trump set of both supply-side fiscal stimulus and bank deregulation with realistic structural reforms in education, residential estate, and financial market stabilization. The Internet inventor Tim Berners-Lee suggests that several tech titans might need to be split up in response to some recent data breach and privacy concerns. Tech titans such as Facebook and Google have become so dominant that they may need to be broken up unless user taste changes and other legal challenges reduce their clout. Berners-Lee, the computer scientist who invented the World Wide Web with no patent protection back in 1989, expresses disappointment with the current state of the Internet in response to the recent Cambridge Analytica scandals over personal data abuse and breach and political hatred propagation on social media platforms such as Facebook and Twitter. Berners-Lee suggests that there is a clear and present danger of both market dominance and cultural power concentration in a small number of tech giants. Few alternative rivals balance this oligopolistic competition for better user privacy and consumer protection. As of December 2017, Facebook, Apple, Microsoft, Google, and Amazon, FAMGA, maintain astronomical stock market capitalization of $3.7 trillion, which is equal to the total GDP of Germany in the same fiscal year. Berners-Lee points out that it is important for these tech titans to break up by shifting exorbitant market power from the current oligopoly to some other medium enterprises. PwC releases a new study of top innovators worldwide as of November 2018. This study assesses the top 1,000 global companies that spend the most on R&D year to date. The total R&D expenditures surged to $782 billion by a hefty margin of 11.4% from 2017. This increase almost triples the recent rise from 2016 to 2017. This acceleration takes place in notable industries such as internet search, e-commerce, artificial intelligence, big data, autonomous transport, semiconductor innovation, software, mobile connectivity, and medicine. The top innovators include Amazon, Alphabet, Volkswagen, Samsung, Intel, Microsoft, Apple, Roche, Johnson & Johnson, and Merck. U.S. public corporations are the biggest R&D spenders and account for about half of total R&D expenditures. Chinese firms experience the fastest R&D capital growth, and this annual upward trend reaches 34% in comparison to an 8% average increase for the U.S. counterparts. As of November 2018, Chinese companies represent 145 of the top 1,000 world-class R&D innovators. R&D capital investments indicate the relative degree of firm commitment to future productivity gains. These productivity gains arise from deep customer-centric insights, talent acquisitions, and rigorous business processes. As R&D investments bring about new patents, trademarks, and copyrights etc., these intellectual properties can serve as competitive moats and advantages that many tech titans enjoy in stark contrast to less tech-savvy traditional firms. Former Fed Chair Janet Yellen worries about U.S. government debt accumulation, expects new interest rate decreases, and warns of the next economic recession. Yellen points out that the current fiscal debt and deficit trajectory is unsustainable in the long run. The famous Sergeant Wallace unpleasant monetarist arithmetic rule suggests that if the government continues to accumulate fiscal deficits, incessant government debt issuance would induce higher inflation in the form of seigniorage taxes. Yellen also suggests that the U.S. Treasury might want to consider raising taxes with lower retirement expenditures. She observes the probable outcome that the current debt deficit dilemma may exacerbate as more baby boomers retire with greater retirement and health care needs. With respect to monetary policy decisions, Yellen advocates more interest rate increases for better inflation containment in light of strong wage growth and labor market momentum. The current interest rate hike helps ensure the sound and stable scenario that the U.S. economy cannot overheat due to cyclical tides. As of November 2018, the Federal Reserve has raised the interest rate 3 times year to date, and many stock analysts and economists expect the FOMC to approve another interest rate hike in December 2018. Yellen expects the next U.S. economic recession to be far off until mid to late 2020. The next recession should be mild, but not deep and terrible. Apple adds fresh features to its new iPad Pro and MacBook Air in addition to its prior suite of iPhone XS, iPhone XS Max, and iPhone XR back in September 2018. As of November 2018, the new iPad Pro integrates facial recognition for better user authentication. With the new iOS 12 operating system and Apple Pencil, the new iPad Pro offers better cellular connectivity. In addition to the new Apple tablet, the MacBook Air is a highly capable notebook with powerful Intel Core i7 CPU, Touch ID, and Liquid Retina 2560 by 1600 high-resolution display. Both the new Apple flagship tablet and notebook embed lean and light specifications on par with fierce competition from Lenovo and Microsoft. Apple further plans to acquire iHeartMedia to better compete with music service providers such as Spotify, Amazon, and Sirius Pandora, etc. In an ambitious bid to boost its music streaming service, Apple may consider either a multi-million-dollar audio and music service partnership or a direct investment in iHeartMedia. As of May 2018, Apple iTunes Music subscription service boasts 50 million active users versus the alternative Spotify network of 83 million premium subscribers. This landmark M&A deal adds much to the prior acquisition of a music recognition app Shazam to bolster the multimedia service division as part of the Apple business empire back in early 2018. Apple CEO Tim Cook now needs to contemplate creative solutions when the Trump steel and aluminum tariffs hit Apple mobile products. One creative solution requires Apple upstream suppliers such as Foxconn and Pegatron to shift new liquid crystal display (LCD) production to America. Another fresh solution entails pushing its offshore upstream suppliers to alternate at least once every 2-year supercycle. Apple now operates in multiple uncharted territories, and this multi-market competition allows Apple to diversify across several complementary lines of high-tech products and services. Due to its frequent multilateral contact with several other tech titans from Microsoft and Lenovo to Samsung and Google, etc., Apple can deter new entrants and competitors across a broad spectrum of smartphones, tablets, notebooks, and voice and video services. This multi-market competition thus results in mutual forbearance and equilibrium. Apple plans to minimize its forward guidance on future iPhone and iPad device sale forecasts per quarter, and this strategic move complements and reinforces the smooth transition toward what Apple CEO Tim Cook views as annual smart device trifectos, for example iPhone XS, iPhone XS Max, and iPhone XR, in the post-Jobs era. Ford and BYD team up to test autonomous cars in China. For the next few years, Ford and BYD plan to collaborate on the design and user acceptance test of driverless vehicles in China. Ford provides autonomous vehicles that fits the BYD proprietary autonomous navigation system Apollo. On-road tests begin to take place in 2018 Q4. Ford and BYD both aim to achieve the USC Level 4 standard. The USC industry classification measures the level of human involvement in autonomous vehicles, and the Level 4 standard stipulates that driverless vehicles can run autonomously within specific areas under the correct weather conditions. By this standard, the Ford BYD autonomous vehicles require no human intervention at all. Although Ford and BYD have yet to disclose their financial terms and ownership structure details of this Sino-US joint venture, these tech firms can leverage innovative artificial intelligence and connectivity solutions that improve the safe and convenient passenger experiences in different environments. Most user acceptance tests are likely to take place in China, and the ultimate Level 4 driverless vehicles will run on both Chinese and American soil. Through this strategic partnership with BYD, Ford can secure its competitive advantage and mode in autonomous cars in response to intense competition from Uber, Lyft, Tesla, and Waymo, etc. Autonomous vehicles remain a top long-term strategic priority for several world-class car makers from Audi and BMW to Mercedes-Benz and Toyota.